Well, one thing is to build mini Class A apartments, and so I'm looking for 1 acre, half-acre tracts, or sorry, 1.5 acre tracts to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So why is this not working?
Any specific part of town or
No, maybe in small rural towns or small little towns around here, like Humble and Katy and Richmond, Dayton, Crosby. Look for 1.5 to 2 acre tracts and build 24 unit apartments on them. That would be a lot of fun.
Okay. Is there any reason you like the number 24? You wouldn't go like
well,
30?
that's the unit I saw. It was beautiful. I mean, there was so much I loved about it on every level. So yeah, I just think it's something I really want to focus on. We gotta get this stuff streamlined because we're not creating the lead funnel. Alamo Ria should have amazing lead funnel. You need to be the key buyer and partner for Alamo Ria on acquisitions. We're not even touching that. We're so hung up on this other crap that is not hitting on all 8 cylinders yet, that we're missing the boat. And you're not going to be able to use me forever.
Yeah, I've already put that request in.
What request is that?
That you're here forever. Where was that 24 unit at that you saw?
It was in Dayton.
You already have somebody to draw up your plans for you?
No, what I really want to do is take whoever drew those plans up and just take them.
Sounds like we need to find out who the owners are and get in touch with them and
yeah,
we can get their drawings. I'm gonna kick it off in about another minute or two. Let the stream get going. I know we are live on Facebook, but we'll get going here in just another minute. What was some of your other goals?
The other goal was to get up to the 10 Airbnbs, and the third goal is to just get everything stabilized and restructured and refinanced. By the way, we get a chance tonight. Let's talk about I think I said that already. Let's talk about that case study of that sub 2 I did about 2010. It's a real deal. And I look at it and I think, hell, this is like as good as a deal can ever be.
Let's do it. Let's go ahead and kick off. Welcome everybody to our weekly live training here on Facebook and on YouTube. Do it every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time. So mark your calendars for that. Tonight's topic, we're going to be talking about, how to spot a good deal and how to avoid the key gotchas. And one of the reasons we're going to be talking about this tonight is yesterday, a group of us went down to the Harris County auction down here in Houston, and just to kind of see how the flow of things and everything like that. And there was a guy down there that had bought a property from the auction, and ultimately, in the long run, I'm not going to bore you with all the details. For one, it's confusing, and I don't have all the details. But the bottom line is he did not do his proper due diligence. There ended up being 2 liens on the property, and he focused. The one that he was buying was the junior lien and not the first position. And the reason he ended up in that deal the way he did is because he did not do his due diligence. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that. We've got some key gotchas that you want to avoid, and some key things that you need to be doing when you are doing your due diligence when looking at a deal. So Ray's got lots of things to cover tonight. So grab your pen, grab your paper, and take some notes. Share this with your friends. It'd be a lot of great information. And before we get started, like we do every week, say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Hit the like button. Hit the hearts. You know, the more comments, the more hearts we get, the more Ray, goes down those rabbit holes and he, tells them stories. He loves the engagement. So let's.
I love what?
Say what?
You said I love what?
You love the engagement. You love the comments. So say hello. Say where you're tuning in from, and let's go ahead and rock and roll, Ray.
Hey, a couple things. Last night, I know you got on the coaching call in the beginning, and we were talking about some of our goals for the upcoming year. And I was just, for the people dialing in, I was just telling James one of my goals this year is to put a certain type of property online. And I'm going to share the screen real quick just so I can show you a picture of it and other people can see it. But this is one of my goals to get done, completed. Maybe not totally rented out, but this is one of my goals right here. And let's see if I can share the screen. Okay, that seems to be sharing right. And then can you see the screen, James?
It has started to share. Yes.
There it is. There it is right there. Now it's a wide angle lens. This is a Google type street. So you can see what it is, but this is a 24 unit Dumaflaci on about an acre and a half. This is kind of a Class A apartment building. And my goal is to build one of these this coming year. We've got 3 primary goals. Every one of them is going to require me to work my tail off this year to get them done. But this is one of them. And I just love it. Being a rehabber and dealing with construction for the last 38 years. When I see something like this, it just gets me real excited. The more you look at this, and the more you understand it, the more you see what's out there and what it's going to look like. So I'm going to unshare my screen, I guess. What do you think of that, James? And there's a lot to talk about there, but yeah, that's one of the things we talked about last night on our goals. So the other thing we talked about last night was on our coaching call was our sorry, I'm trying to get this thing back to where it was, the Zoom call. One of the things we talked about was foreclosures, because the group of the volunteers and stuff and students went to the foreclosure auction. I couldn't make it, but we did talk about it, and we spent most of our time just going through the foreclosure listing and talking about what the different data means that they provide to you. It's not straightforward. There's a lot of lessons. And the example that you brought up, why don't you share with them the specific example that you brought up of one of the things you saw at the auction? And let's just talk about that for a few minutes. And then I want to share with you, on this call, I want to share with you a deal we did about 9 or 10 years ago. And this morning, we were doing comps on that property, and it just blew me away what I found out when we did the comps. And I want to share with everybody how we put that deal, not how we put it together, but what we did to make that deal work and what the result of that was. So if you don't mind, James, and hopefully I'm not taking over your agenda, but share with us what happened at the auction, and then let's talk about that because it's more common than people realize.
So first of all, Ray, your screen is still being shared. So
okay, yeah, I'm trying to I don't know how to get this thing fully exploded. I'm on the Zoom call and I can't get it to full size.
So while you're figuring that out,
I see where it is. It's on my other screen. Okay.
Okay. So just a quick overview. Again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds because I don't have all the details. But essentially,
listen, based on what you tell me, we don't need all the details because I already know exactly what happened, and it's happened so frequently. We don't have to talk about that specific thing, but we have to talk about what kind of happened and how it happens.
So basically, there was multiple liens on the property. There were multiple loans, that is, and they were taken out on the same day, same company, and everything was the same. And so they basically overlooked that they didn't realize which one they were bidding on. And they ended up bidding on the junior lien and they won. And so that meant that the first position was still there. And now they're upside down the property and they're trying to get out. And again, it goes back to them not dotting their I's and crossing their T's. You know, this happened to be a mortgage foreclosure, but you'd be surprised on the tax foreclosures, it's even easier to get caught up, you know, by not doing your due diligence. It's easier to get caught up in a bad deal there as well.
So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, that's. So how did these people, did you just happen to meet up with them and they were explaining that to you, or were they?
I saw them off to the side, you know, because again, the auction was set up in two separate areas.
Right.
And so we went through the taxes first, and then we went over to the mortgage side. And when we're over there, they had this big table because they're trying to fight it because, you know, there was mistakes.
Were they fighting it from like a previous month auction or from that month's auction?
Yeah, it was a previous month. I don't know exactly when they bought it, but they're trying to fight it, you know, because they were supposed to be bidding on the.
So what they did is they went, okay, so just so you'll know, at the auction, first of all, if you're serious about real estate investing, go to a big city auction, okay, and just try to get the lay of the land. In fact, if not only is that on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 9 of great things to do for a real estate investor, the only way it could become a 10 is pick 10 or 15 properties that are going to be foreclosed on, and then do research on to the best of your ability. If you're like a student, we'll show you exactly how to do the research, and we'll show you how to avoid that stupid mistake that tons of people make, that these guys make. We were just involved in a transaction where another party in the transaction made that stupid mistake, and we could have taken their $100,000 that they made a mistake, and we didn't. We gave it back to them, and they didn't know. We could have. It's just so amazing how they screwed that up, and it's like, sometimes you wonder about yourself because they literally gave us $100,000 because they didn't know what they were doing. And we put that money in the bank. And then ultimately we gave it back to them to clear up the lien. But we could have cleared up the lien and not given them the $100,000 back. Of course, we'd have probably invited a lawsuit for the next 3 or 4 years, which that's crazy too. But people do what you said all the time. They don't know what they're doing. But what we encourage, like our students do, is go to these foreclosure auctions. If you can, to get a 10 out of 10, a possible 10 value, pick some properties and follow them through on the auction. Just pretend that you're going to buy them, do the due diligence, do the title search, follow them through the auction, do the ARVs, go through that process, and you will be shocked at how much you learn. And if you're like around people, like if you're maybe you've got a really good friend that knows what he's doing or something, then ask them questions, because you don't even know where the landmines are until you mentally go through that process. So either A, go to the auction, but better yet, go to the auction with about 10 properties you're following. Try to find out where they're being bid on. Try to find out what the sales price is. Try to find out what the ARV is. See if you can make it work. And what you're going to find out of 10 or 15 deals that you're following, there's a really high probability you're going to make one of them work. So that's kind of a dry run. Then once you do that 1 or 2 months in a row, then go to the table with money, right? Bring some money and do it. Now, this is where, if you don't know what you're doing, you should not let yourself be the expert. If you think you're the expert on doing certain phases of this, you're going to make the mistake that these guys did. These guys, first of all, just a couple things. When you do a title search, you should have an abstractor do it for you. Don't do it yourself, or you should have a title company do it. And get an abstractor that's all they do. Can abstractors make mistakes? Hell yeah, they can make mistakes, just like title companies can make mistakes. So, and I hope this doesn't sound like gobbledygook to the people listening in, but you got to know how the title's working. It is very common for two liens to be taken out the same day, the same time, because people are doing like an 80-15 or 80-20. In other words, they're taking a loan for the 80% and then a slightly higher interest rate for the 20%. Now, these people, if they'd have really been doing their due diligence, they'd have realized that they were bidding on the 20% mortgage and not the 80% mortgage, right? They would have put the grantor in the person's name in the grantor index and found out that there were two liens, right? And they should have known all the liens. And the odds of it being an indexing problem, and that's called the grantor grantee index, the odds of there being a mistake are probably very, very remote. It's possible, but these are people who are very greedy, thought they were buying something for 20 cents on the dollar, and all you need is a couple people like that. So let's just back up a little bit. So they have the auction. The lender says, hey, I'm owed $20,000, right? So let's say it's a 20%, let's say the sales price was $120,000. They're borrowing 100% of the money, okay? Well, so there'd be a first lien of 100,000 and a second lien of 20,000. They're all originated by the same lender, same day, very, very common. And then they go down there 5 years later, 15 years later, they're foreclosing on the second lien, which is the $20,000 lien. So if they're foreclosing on that second lien, then they're supposed to see if that person has any other liens against that property and against that person. Well, not so much about the person, but against the property. And if they see that there's a $20,000 lien on a $120,000 property, and by the way, now it's a $200,000 property, well, they should be able to do the math and say, how did that amortize? Why is the numbers like that? They should smell a rat, right? And you can kind of smell a rat. Well, when they bid on that, typically people aren't going to spend a lot of money on second liens because they know the first is staying in place. Okay, so 9 out of 10 of the people that make this mistake don't understand how junior liens and superior liens work, so they don't know what they're doing. They don't get an abstractor to do it, and then they go in there and bid. They think that this is easy stuff, and then all you need is 1 or 2 other dummies in the room with you, and they're going to be bidding against you. And they think, and remember, 8 or 9 years ago, this property was worth 120 because that was the loan amount, more or less. Well, that property is now worth 180 or 190,000. So they're going to be bidding on a $20,000 lien, and all you need is 1 or 2 other dummies in there with you, and they're going to bid that up and bid it up and bid it up, and before you know it, they're bidding $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 on that $20,000 lien. Well, guess what? That's the second lien. So they bid it up to 80,000, and the second lien, the first lien balance is still say 90,000, right? Because it was originally 100. So now they're $160,000, $170,000, and the first lien's in default. So all of a sudden they're upside down. It's probably too confusing to talk about. That's what happened on an HOA lien. We were a lender on a deal and recently, and there was an HOA lien that we didn't get notified, and which is interesting because all parties have to be notified, and you can turn it over if they're not notified. So we weren't notified as a lien holder, and people paid $115,000 for that $3,000 lien on that property. They paid $115,000. And all we have to do is we say, okay, send the overage to us, which is 115,000 minus 3 is 112, right? So we tell them to tell the constable to send the 100. It's the Harris County. It's a Harris County treasurer, the county treasurer. We say, send us the $112,000. They send us 112, which they did. And I made that number up. It was over 100,000. They sent us a $100,000 check. We put it in our bank account, and we gave that $100,000 to the person that overbid, right? Because it's on HOA, so we have a superior lien. We're the first lien holder. So we give them that money to get to redeem the property for them. So we did that because we're nice guys and we don't want to go to court for the next 3 years. Well, We didn't have to do that. We could have put the money in our bank and then foreclose on them because we have a superior lien position. Just like in that case, the first lien holder, in the case you're talking about, could foreclose and wipe out that second, right? Now, the second lien holder, that one that bid in your example, they have the right to take over the first lien, which may be not a bad thing, but they're upside down. There's no equity. They're probably $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 over the value. In this case, just a few months ago, you got somebody bidding on an HOA. We could have put that $100,000 in our pocket, foreclosed on them, and wiped them out. And it just blows me away when these people go to the auction. They don't know what they're doing, and they get wiped out. I mean, it's a shame that happens, but it gets wiped out. And you don't want to go to an auction. And by the way, the trustee's not going to do nothing about it. The trustee doesn't even have the authority to do anything about it. And the trustee is the person selling it for the lender. If the trustee looks at it and says, I don't have the right to do it. I'm a representative of this party. The only thing we have to know is, did I do the auction properly? Did I follow the rules? And did I give the proper notices? And if they did, it's not his money. He's a trustee. The money belongs to the lender. So now they're going to go back to the lender and say, oh, by the way, we screwed up and we made you $80,000 or $90,000. And by the way, the lender can't hold on to that overage. Eventually that overage has got to go to the homeowner. It'll go back to the homeowner or whoever the owner of that property was. And so which one of those turkeys is going to give up that overage that extra money they pay? It's not going to happen. The odds of that, talking to the trustee is like just wasting your breath. Okay, so they're screwed, and it happens all the time at the auctions. I know I went too deep, but I mean, I guess when you realize that it's a real human being making that $50,000, $80,000 mistake, this is real. It really is real. It really, really happens on like unbelievable level.
Well, the fact of the matter is there's multiple ways that you can get yourself into a bad deal. That was just one thing that, these guys did, and I have stories of mistakes that I've made. I've experienced some of the gotchas, you have in your time that you've been buying houses, you've experienced some. So tonight I want to kind of go into that. And I think you also, in addition, wanted to have, do a little case study. So if you want to go ahead and share your screen again, you can.
Then why do I want to share my screen? Is there something we want to show?
Were you going to bring up the case study and show?
No, I just wanted to. So in my life, I've had multiple 2x4 minutes. And what I call a 2x4 minute is when somebody gets a 2x4 and hits you over the head. And it's like, you don't listen, or either a deal, you look in the rearview mirror, which I was telling you, which, by the way, I think that's poetic, saying rearview mirror. You look in the rearview mirror, and that's when you really appreciate the 2x4 minutes, because there's different kinds of 2x4 minutes. There's the kind where you spend 4 times as much as you should, or maybe 100 times as much as you should on a second lien, like these people just learned, or like in our HOA, they walked away scot-free. There was no penalty. I could have probably went to them and said, thank you for the $100,000 check. I'll give it back to you for a right of redemption for $50,000, or I can wipe you out in a foreclosure. Which one do you want to do? We could have done that, but it's morally, ethically, it's not right. Right? They made a mistake. I'm the only one that has the power to correct it. And if I put myself in their position, and it's like, how would I want people to treat me if I were in the same position? And it was pretty simple when you ask that question. So the couple 2x4 minutes, one I want to share with you with the case study. I want people to understand how the numbers work. And this is one of those things you look in a rearview mirror. So we've been doing sub-2s since late 80s. Honestly, I think our very first one was in the late 80s. We paid, Audie and I probably paid 10,000 mortgage payments over this time on sub-2s on mortgages, but a lot of those were sub-2s. So we bought a property, and I got this deal from networking. And this is why you want to network. When you get some talent or you get some skill, Now it's time to network. And that's why negotiating and doing that kind of stuff makes sense. So we were at a RIA meeting, and this person said, hey, I want to sell this property. I just want to make $5,000. So I said, okay, let's go look at it. So, and I want to say it's 2010. I haven't, normally on a case study, I look in the file and get the dates and the right numbers. But I remember like it was yesterday, we spent $5,000. We gave $5,000 to the wholesaler, and we took over somebody's existing loan. That was the only money that changed hands. We then turned around and we needed $20,000 in the form of repairs. So we turned around and brought an investor in, and we it's a little bit too complicated, but we basically did a lease option to benefit them even more. So don't worry about that part. That's not the part of the story that matters. What matters is we got $20,000 from a private lender, okay? And how we did it was kind of cute too, but it's not necessary for this story. But we got the $20,000 for a private lender. We made them a sweetheart deal. Well, we did that. We were going through some of the numbers that we have like a status meeting every Tuesday. In this particular property, we're looking at the values on the property. That property is now worth $240,000. We bought it at the time. There was a lien on it, about $50,000, $40,000, and so we were all in for another $5,000. So we're in it for like $55,000. In the 10 years that have gone by, which several things happened. The $20,000 is basically paid off. The underlying mortgage is paid off, and the balance is the value is $240,000. So with $5,000 out of our pocket, we've paid everybody off the rents collected that we collected on the property, and now we're like 3 months away from owning that property free and clear. So that's just, to me, so I want to repeat that. We went from $5,000. Now, there is a lot of work that went into managing it and taking care of it, but it's $5,000 out of our pocket. We collected cash flow along the way, not a ton of cash flow, but now it's worth $240,000. That's $240,000 in unrepaired condition. In other words, rental condition, which is what it is. If you go in and spend about $15,000, you can get it up to $280,000. So that's the 2x4 minute. When you look at that in the rearview mirror, it's like, honestly, I haven't even thought about the problem. We just put it in our houses that we rent, and it's just managing the rental all this time. And we were making enough money to pay us a little bit of money, and occasionally we'd have turnover or whatever, but it's just the normal day-to-day management stuff. And it just grew quietly and silently. What else can you do about that? So that's what you want to do. Now, it does help to understand, just like in that foreclosure, it helps to understand how to put that document together, how to do your due diligence, how to make sure you got all the stuff in the right place so that you can do it, and then figuring out how you can hold on to it. Because if I was a wholesaler and I gave that away, how much of that $5,000, what is that guy's $5,000 grown into that I gave him for that money? And I don't care if you said $50,000, he wouldn't have none of that left. And I sat there and made a little bit of cash flow. Me and my brother made a little bit of cash flow, and all of a sudden, this asset's sitting there worth somewhere between $240,000, $280,000. So I know one of the things you really wanted to talk about was due diligence and gotchas, right? For
yeah,
this meeting.
I was just fixing to say, we keep hearing the words due diligence. I wanted to get what that looks like from you, and what do you look at? What are some key things that you look at when you're looking at a deal or looking at a property that is easy to overlook? That can come back and be one of those 2x4 months.
So if you give real life examples, they tend to be really micro focused, and they're not like a wide span. And so that case study is a realization. We have another property. We're buying a lot. We have a mobile home sitting there in a yard waiting to be put on a lot. So the rule is, if you put a $10,000 or $15,000 mobile home on a $15,000 or $25,000 piece of ground, it's worth $100,000, right? So we're trying to buy a lot for like $25,000 or I don't know, in that range, right? We're trying to buy the lot. We're supposed to close on it. A wholesaler brought it to us. Well, when we went and looked at that property, the neighbor across the street came and said, "Why are you here?" And we said, "Well, we're looking at the property." And they said, "Well, this belongs to my mom." And the lady that was telling us this, she's probably 35 or 40 years old. She says that belongs to my mom. She doesn't want to sell it. So the wholesaler brought the property to us. And now we're looking at that and we're saying, well, okay, who's the owner? Now, there's a cyclone fence there, 4-foot cyclone fence. There was a dog on a leash. So somebody's in possession of the property. And that dog, she said, belonged to her. So the person's in possession. Well, when we get the title search back, it shows the owner's name and it's not her. In fact, we knew it wasn't going to be her because she said, "My mom doesn't want to sell the property. She's not interested." And so they're supposed to call me this evening to see if we can figure out how to make this work. But she said she's not interested in selling it. So now I've got a seller that wants to sell this lot through a wholesaler, right? I also got another person that would be a party in possession. Well, guess what's exempted from a title policy? A party in possession. So if there's somebody in possession of that property, I got a title company that thinks it's somebody over here. I got a person across the street that thinks that they're the owners. So to me, it's like messing with a hornet's nest to get into something like this. Now, we said in our coaching call, I don't know if you heard this part, but whenever you have screwed up problems, you don't run from those, you run to them, because as real estate investors, we get paid for solving problems. And if we're smart about it, we figure out how to solve it. That problem we solved 10 years ago, it was a wholesaler wanted $5,000. It wanted a person to get out of paying their mortgage every month. We solved both of those problems and we end up making $240,000 at least on this one deal. So
I want to stop you, Rand. I want you to repeat that. And then I want to volunteer to write that in the comments, but repeat what you said about solving problems. That's what we get paid for.
Yeah, you don't, people run away from problems and we really want to run to them. It's just like I had a problem being an introvert and speaking in front of audiences. And I already knew this philosophy that things that control you make you weaker, and things that you control make you stronger. And it's not that I want to be smarter or stronger than anybody else. I just don't want to set limitations for me that I can overcome. And knowing you can overcome them, because I see people out there all the time that can very good at speaking to audiences, very good at getting persuasion, very good at negotiating. So those to me are like, those are just technical issues. I just got to figure out how to have those abilities. I figure I have to how to train myself, how to grow into that. And so if these things are your problems, then don't run from them, run to them. And in this case, we have a title issue. And so we know that one person is in possession. So they're excluded from the title policy. So if I go out there and I get and I buy the property and I get title insurance, the question is, and the title company is a $1 billion insurance company or $100 million or $500 million insurance company, is going to indemnify me by being ready to write me a check. Are they really indemnifying me? And I know I'm speaking, this is where real estate, when you get a little mileage under your belt, you're not going to make mistakes. But even no matter where you're at in real estate, you've got to have partners or team members, because the partners and team members are going to have that knowledge, like a good real estate attorney, a good partner who maybe knows what they're doing, good contractors who know how to do things, a good title company that knows how to solve problems. So having those team members are critical. So in this particular case, I'm no expert on title policies, but I've really tried hard to be experts on it. And I'll never forget, Jack Miller told this story, and I hope if you're a Jack Miller fan and you're listening, if I get this wrong, correct me on it. But I heard this story 35 years ago. I never forgot the story. And this little story helped me understand title insurance. And it's important because title insurance is a big part of what we do. So Jack Miller and some partners had this house that was built on what was supposed to be the parking lot for Disneyland. And they bought the house for $30,000. And later on, they found out there was a title defect. Well, when it became clear that Disneyland was going to buy this property at any price, right? They were one of the last holdouts. Imagine what a little lot in a critical area in the middle of a parking lot at Disneyland would be worth. And so even though they bought it for $30,000, now the value was, and I'm going to pick a number because I don't think they ever told us, but it could be 200, 400, it could be worth $1 million, right? Well, when the title company finally decided that they were wrong, you know what they did? They paid off. They paid off according to their title policy. They got their checkbook out and they wrote a check for $30,000 to the people that bought that property and thought they had something worth $1 million. And that's the way title insurance works. They're going to write you an insurance based on your amount of coverage. So did that $30,000 cover all that upside in value, right? So you got to know kind of how title insurance works. So you got to read it, and there's 4 schedules typically, and I've seen a lot of title policies across the country. But that's, if you want to become a real estate investor, it's mandatory reading, just like contracts. You got to do some work, and you got to know what the different what the 4 schedules are at a typical title policy. And you got to know what your coverage is. I know that I'm not covered for people with parties in possession. The other thing is, if I buy this property for $25,000, I've got $25,000 worth of coverage. What if I spend another $20,000 or $30,000 improving it, or $50,000? Am I covered? No. So be careful with title insurance. So that's a gotcha. Title insurance is not the security blanket that everybody thinks it is. It's a little bit of a security blanket, but it's not, and it'll cover claims up to a certain amount, which is pretty valuable. But anything above what your amount of coverage is, you've got a problem. So that's a gotcha, is understanding what role title insurance plays. A lot of people think, oh, I got clear title and I'm insured. Well, you might be insured, but it still might not be enough to cover that. So that's a gotcha. Things like surveys. We've bought properties before that had liens and easements on them, or not liens, but had easements on them that you wouldn't know were there. You wouldn't expect to be there. We had a big time wholesaler trying to sell us a property, and we did a survey on it. There was an aerial easement going through the second floor of the house, an aerial easement, which means that the second floor was built right through that aerial easement. And I said, it's an easement that they might want to put a telephone wire through, right? Or telephone power cable through, right? From one telephone pole to the next. They had that easement. Would the power company ever use that? Has the power company ever used it? The answer is probably no. So like, as a practical matter, if I was going to take that house and rent it for the rest of my life, would I ever have anything to worry? In fact, would I not have anything to worry about. There's a good chance that I can negotiate the seller down on price just because now we got a real defect. But what if I wanted to sell that house in 3 years or 5 years? They're going to pick that up again. So now I'm buying a house that has a defect. And I remember talking to the wholesaler. I said, look, give me my money back, or I'm not going to fix this because it couldn't deliver clear title. If you want to fix it, I'll buy it. And I did talk to an attorney that specialized in easements, and that this is about getting the right people. Because you get the right people, they'll give you the right answer. And I asked her, I said, well, how long if we wanted to fix that? What's the guarantee that we can fix it? And she said 99%. Okay, not good enough, right? And I said, how long does it take to fix that and get that removed? And she said, usually 2 to 3 years. So I'm out of there, right? That's it. That's the end of that deal. Now we had another property that I helped a buddy. I wasn't the primary in, I was a secondary in, and they had an easement going a foot over where the building was built. They had that easement. So we went in there, we got the survey, and we had the guy tried to sell what is probably a $750,000 house now. He was trying to sell that house, and his deal was killed. He was about to get foreclosed on, And we agreed to buy that house for literally 40 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar. And it was a wonderful house, didn't need any upgrades or anything. And we had that easement fixed. We had the easement fixed, and it cost about $3,000 to fix that easement. And that generated about $200,000, $300,000 in value. And unfortunately, I was the secondary. I was the one that got that to work. He made the primary, which is a student of ours. He made the majority of that money, but we fixed that. And by knowing how to fix those things and knowing when to fix them and know when to fight, that makes sense. So in other words, this little flip that I'm going to do and not make a lot of money, and I got to hold on for 2 or 3 years, and I don't have an absolute answer, and then I got to buy it all cash up front, my risk is off the chart, my reward's relatively low. On this other house, we can take over the payment. We say, look, if we can fix it, we're going to continue to buy it, and we're not going to give the house back. If we can't fix it, we'll give you the house back. So our risk was very, very low, even though the house was worth probably 10 times as much. Our risk, because we negotiated and set up the terms, our risk was a lot lower, and that's key. So if you have gotchas, negotiate those gotchas, set up the deal so that the gotcha isn't going to kill you, right? That you have the ability to walk from it, or you have the ability to pull your money back, or you have the ability to not put all your money in until you fix the gotcha, then fix the gotcha, and then all of a sudden you create credible value. So those are some other ideas of other things of gotcha. Give me a category and I'll tell you what my experience with the gotchas are.
Well, first of all, I want to let everybody know, for one, if you're enjoying this, if you're liking this content, leave us a comment. And of course, if you have any questions in about 10 minutes or so, we're going to open it up and we'll take a couple of questions if we can. So what are some key things, like when you're walking a house or looking at a house or you're in your due diligence period, what are some things that you look for that are easy to overlook?
Okay, I think that's a wonderful question. And by the way, I can't emphasize this enough. Like because we've been real involved in our RIAs, there's so many people I can reach out to a lot of times. And because I've decided I'm going to hang around with smart people that know how to get things done. All my life, people tell me, it's almost a weekly thing somebody tells me you can't do something, and we turn around and do it. Okay. And it's because you're hanging around talented people who know how to get things done. And that's what gives you some huge advantages. The other thing is you can't get 40 years of experience in 6 months, but you can hang around people that have that, and you got to somehow incentivize them to be interested in your problems, right? And so how you do that, either write them a check, take care of them in some other way, wash their car for them. So whatever you got to do, you got to have talent on your team. And so that's real important. And when I look back and I look back in the rearview mirror, a lot of the great things that happened wasn't from my brain. It was from the brains of the people around me and me reaching out to really talented and smart people. But let's just start out with I just love your question. So if let's say it's a house, right? Is it a house or commercial property? We want to go with a house?
Let's go with a house, yes.
Okay, so the first thing you want to do, and let's assume that we're in the car, because we do a lot more due diligence on the computer than we've ever done. But at some point, you got to get in the car and you got to walk the house. We have broke that rule a few times. We got away with breaking the rule a few times, and we also didn't get away with breaking the rule a few times. So you got to have somebody that knows their business walk the house. And by the way, if you don't know this business, then that's not you. Okay, it's somebody that knows their business walks the house. So first thing is, when you know how it is on the phone now, we're literally on the phone, GPS, somewhere in the back of my mind, GPS says turn right in 1,000 feet, and then I turn right, and then GPS says turn left. And so if you're like me, most of us don't have a clue where we're at 99% of the time anymore, because we're getting directions somewhere in the back of our mind, and we're following that, and we're talking on the phone, or we're daydreaming. So when I'm going to look at a house, I turn that daydreaming off the minute I pull off the main street or I'm getting close to the house. I turn that daydreaming off and I focus on where I'm at. Like as I'm going into that subdivision, are the businesses thriving and there's cars in the parking lot? Are these buildings there that are empty that should be filled? And they're empty because there's no businesses open in there. So I'm kind of getting a feel for, by the way, that's the number one sign that you're in a high crime area. High crime areas are difficult to have good quality houses. And we're talking about housing. So right away, I want to start paying attention to the environment that I'm in. I'm also trying to pay attention to natural or man-made defects that you can't overcome. So as I'm driving up to the house and I'm looking at the house, is there those 150-foot power lines behind it that microwave dogs' heads and kill people when, after they live there for a year? Who knows what the radiation does? Or is there a bayou on the property? Is there evidence of flooding? In the market we're in, there's quite a few. They're not common, but they're common enough that I pay attention. I look for fault lines, and there's ways beyond the scope of this conversation. There's ways to tell it. There's fault lines that are going through there. I look and see what's going on in that neighborhood. I look at the pride of ownership. It could be if it was equivalent to say apartments, it could be like a Class C area where it's kind of old and it's not perfect. And you might think might be high crime, but you go in there and there's lots of pride of ownership. There's people out in their front yards. It's just a place where people are happy to live. Then I'm looking for those signs. So I'm looking kind of at the general area because you can't fix a subdivision, right? You're not going to repair it. You're not going to get rid of a crime if a 1 mile radius of that property, there's no open businesses. You're not going to overcome that. If you want to build a 500 unit apartment complex, it's probably worthwhile to try to overcome that. If you're going to buy a single house, move on. Okay. So, or either get a huge discount because the house has a defect, and the defect is it's in a bad area. That's a defect that will stay with that house forever. So as we get closer and closer to the house, then the area is more important to me probably than the condition of the house. That's important, but the area, you get, just like that example I gave you, that area is just off the charts good. It's just going to keep going up, and it's a small house and it's already got that value. So it's just going to keep increasing in value. So anyway, so first thing is look at the area. Then when I'm looking at the house, is like, is there a crack house next door? Is there 15 cars in the yard and people are all over the place? If I can't buy that house, I may not want to buy this house, because when I go to rent it or sell it, any decent person is not going to want to live next to that. And I don't want to think of a tenant or a owner finance person as your partner, right? None of my partners, that they're required, their job is to pay rent. Their job is to pay their owner finance thing. None of my partners are going to want to live in that house. None of the partners I want to have. If one of my partners is happy being next to a house of prostitution or a crack house, I probably shouldn't want that person as my partner. They got issues, right? And I can't fix them either. So if it's okay for you to live there, then you're disqualified, right? So you got to have a decent place for people to live. I look at where the house is located in the particular subdivision. Like, nothing beats a cul-de-sac, right? And then a corner lot, people like it, but corner lots are not what they're cracked up to be. Corner lots in most neighborhoods is actually an undesirable property. Some neighborhoods, it's okay. So like I'm living kind of a small neighborhood and we're on a corner lot, but there's not much traffic in our neighborhood like some of them. The other thing is look at egress and ingress to that subdivision. So in that subdivision, are you on the main street that feeds 50 other streets, that feeds 1,000 houses, right? If you are, you might as well be on a highway. And by the way, for people that don't know how to do comps or people that don't know this, that's a defect. And so typically you'll find the values of comparables houses that are on busy streets are anywhere from 10 to 25% less valuable. Okay, they're 10 to 25% less valuable. So if the value, say, of that neighborhood in a cul-de-sac is $200,000, the value of that house on the busy street is going to be $150,000. Now that means that if you get it for $140,000, it's not a good deal because you got a $10,000 below market, right? But if you get it for $100,000, that's a good deal, or $90,000. So remember, you've got to factor in what that defect cost is. And of course, I said power lines. That's on the outside of the house. We're already making that decision, right? So now if we go inside, another thing on the outside, by the way, is I'm looking for prior crack slabs or current crack slabs. And so we'll look at those kinds of things. And then, we'll look at the outside perimeter. Of course, we're looking at what the cost of the repairs are and stuff like that, because there's some things that look bad aren't bad. Some things that don't look bad are bad. Another big thing, depending on where you're at, really anywhere you're at, you need to keep this in mind, but look for drainage issues. Some drainage issues you can fix for $100, some for $1,000, and some might cost $50,000 or $75,000. So be concerned with drainage issues. Of course, we want to know if it's a flood area. So now when you walk in the house, we're looking for defects in the house. And we're really looking for the biggies. So by the way, I didn't include roofing on the outside, but you're looking for roofing. You're looking at the age of the condensers, if it's central air. If they're near the end of their life, it can be expensive to put that stuff in. And AC cost, if you're in the South anywhere, AC is necessary, right? If you're in the North, not so necessary. But in the South, expensive AC is necessary. And so those can be a big expense. When we get inside, we're looking for like the totality of the amount of things. There's houses we go in and this one room is screwed up beyond belief, but it's contained to that room. Then other houses we go into, every single system is destroyed, substandard, screwed up, and those things turn into what we call projects. And a lot of smart investors, and I have to agree with them, we want to avoid projects, which is what we're dealing with every single system everywhere, because it can be so expensive and so time consuming, and you can be blindsided. So we're looking for things like that. Other things we're looking for is Chinese-made sheetrock that had the issue. We're looking for galvanized piping to see if that's an issue. Looking for things that are not up to code. Two pin sockets where instead of having a ground, a neutral, and a hot, it just has a ground and a neutral. So we're looking for those kinds of things. There's a whole big list of things, but flooring, is a big item. You're almost always going to change out the flooring in a rehab. There's dozens of things, but cosmetic means you should be able to get in maybe for $10,000, $15,000. Medium rehab, maybe $25,000 to $40,000, and high dollar rehab, $70,000 to $100,000. If you've done like 5 or 10 rehabs or less, don't do big rehabs. You just don't do it because you don't know enough to properly protect yourself from the guys that are going to get to you. If it's a small rehab, you can lose with a contractor and still get out of it without losing money. You look like you want to say something, James. Either that or
I was going to say, no, you put me to sleep 8 years ago, but
don't tell them that's good.
I just wanted to add on to what you were saying about don't do that big rehab if you haven't done enough. The piece I wanted to add to that is don't do it alone. If you have somebody with experience who has done a lot of rehabs, then, partner up with them. I think that would be a good way to learn, but don't ever go at it alone. Your first couple of rehabs, you probably want to keep them cosmetic only around that $20,000 mark.
Yeah, and I have to do a shameless plug here. if you're looking for a coach or somebody to help you on your rehabs, give us a consideration of that, because between Pat and I, Pat's on our team, we've probably done about 2,000 rehabs. So, and if you look at it, like, where do people make money in real estate? Number one, they make money by solving problems, right? So you're going to solve different problems. What are the different problems? They're either management problems, they're money problems, or they're rehab problems. So if you're skilled in restructuring money and setting it up properly, if you're skilled in rehabbing, or if you're skilled in property management, then you've got a chance of, when somebody walks to you and says, here's my problem, it's in one of those three categories. So if you develop expertise in any one of those three categories, you're going to get paid because you have the ability. If you can find the problem that lines up with your skill, you're going to get paid very frequently because you know how to fix that, overcome that. And when I started, it was rehabbing. So I got paid frequently and often because I could take on a problem that had that the functional use of that property wasn't what the market wanted, right? It was like a 2-1. Well, the market says I want a 3-2. So that means you got to add a bedroom and a bathroom. Well, that's very easy to do. You add 500 to 800 square feet. Now you got a 3-2. Well, as a rehabber, you develop skill, you develop the contractors, you develop the team. On the sub 2, for example, that's money, understanding money and how to put creative deals together. If you can figure out how to do that, you get paid. I got paid because I knew how to do it. I knew how to get the wholesaler paid. I knew how to solve the problem, and I solved the money problem. And then property management, and we didn't give any case studies on this, but when you're in this business for a while, a lot of people hand you the keys to their property because it's not performing. Its job is to generate income, and it's not generating income. So you've got to learn how to do that. Now, being in this business so long, I feel like I've learned how to be pretty good at all three of them. And because we are buy and hold, and because our very first property in 1980, well, it was put online in 1983, we had those tenants for 30 years, and we never stopped buying rental properties after that. And so it helped us become confident in knowing what we can solve and knowing what we couldn't. So what appears to be unsolvable problems in the property management side are very solvable often if you just have the right team and you have the right skill, you have the right people you can consult with. So if you master those three areas, and then you tell the market, I'm ready to help solve your problems, you're going to get regular paychecks, and you're going to, a lot of these things, you're going to create the real gold mine, which is you're going to figure out how to hold on to properties and have the tenant pay them off for you. And it's never been easier to do that than it is right now. It's unbelievable. The hardest thing now is just getting the leads. If you can get the leads, figuring out how to do buy and hold has never been easier than it is this minute. I mean, it's this minute, and there's really good reasons that justify that point of view.
So as Ray mentioned, he did the shameless plug about, doing the coaching and everything. I'm going to put a link in the comments, or I'll have Hal do that. Put a link in the comments. You can schedule a call with me, and we'll go over that and see if we're a good fit, and, we'll get you going in the right direction. But we are almost out of time. So did want to do one last call for questions, and then also let everybody know about the events that we have coming up. We do have our RIA meeting this Saturday in Houston, and we'll put the information in the comments as well. Do you have anything you want to close with, Ray, while we're waiting on a couple of questions to come in?
Yeah, I think there was a question. How I saw it shoot across the screen. Do I have any? No, I just think this is a fun business, and you just got to get out there, and to me, ever since 1982, when we bought our very first house, I've been energized by this business. In fact, even before we bought the first house, I stood in the back of a room where they were talking about how to put deals together, and I knew this was for me. And I've just been lucky or fortunate that I hooked up with a couple of smart people early on And I saw those three areas we're talking about. I saw early on how valuable they are. And I decided I was going to become a student. And I will say today, and James, you're around me enough more than most people, you know, like I'm a student of this. We never stop being a student of it. We keep learning, and I've never had more fun. I mean, I just am so excited that I'm still able to do this. In fact, we started this, and now my brother and sister-in-law work in it. My daughter and my son work in the business. My wife works in the business. We have a full-time bookkeeper, and then we got tons of partners. We partner with people all the time, and you know, we learned a lot about how to do the partnerships right. That's not easy stuff, because a lot of times you don't know what you're getting into, and then when it starts going sideways, it's because you just didn't figure out how to set it up right and do it right in the first place. So so it's just been, you know, it's been a great journey for me. It's been a blast. It's been nice. I've worked hard, and a lot of my buddies and people who are doing this, they've also worked hard. But also, you get a control in your life that you wouldn't have otherwise when you're working for somebody else. And you have, I think, the fact that probably the worst thing about working for somebody else is you have to show up at a certain time and you have to leave at a certain time, and you're making them wealthy and you're making them successful, and you're not activated, you're not actuated. I think the word's actuated. You're not really. It's not you, it's them, right? It's for them. And I'm just so glad that I got out of that. It was hard for me to quit my corporate job. I'd been there for 10 years, and it was hard for me to quit that. And I never looked back. I'm just glad I finally did it.
Awesome. Well, that is the show for tonight. We're glad you made it.
Did Hal not have a question? Did not somebody ask a question?
It was more of a statement, but yeah. So, thank you, Ray. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you Saturday at our event. And then also remember, every Wednesday night, we're here to do our live training with you. So we will see y'all guys later.
All right. Thank you, James.